Hello. I've been doing a particularly bad job of getting new videos out lately just because I'm busy and my brain's in 20 places at once, and I've got I've got a few vintage computer videos like halfway filmed or halfway written, and I'm not doing a good job at finishing any of them. So I thought, well, I better, in the meantime, make a video that will be relatively easy and quick to do. So how about I talk about what I'm doing for this year's installation of my vintage incandescent Christmas lights. You may recall about half a decade ago, I bought several strings of vintage C7 incandescent Christmas lights. I also procured a bunch of spare bulbs, and I made a great big video about that back in the day. I had a massive installation in my old apartment, something like 400 or 500 watts worth of incandescent Christmas lights strung every which way. I also bought some limited edition incandescent Christmas lights that Canadian Tire here in Canada were selling. They only sold them for 1 year, so I'm really glad I bought 2 boxes of those Christmas lights. And I made those 2 videos, but I haven't talked about these in, I think, 4 years. In fact, these particular strings of Christmas lights I haven't hung up in, I think, 3 years. Last year, for reasons I no longer remember, I just didn't get in the spirit, in the mood of hanging up Christmas lights at all in here, so I didn't. Year before last, I did hang up Christmas lights, but it wasn't these. It was the aforementioned Canadian Tire, the Noma Heritage globe incandescent Christmas lights. So year before last, I hung those up in here. But this year, finally, after a 3-year hiatus, the vintage C7 lights are back. So this is what I've got this year. We're here in the kitchen / living room. I've got a loop of them set up here. And then for the first time, I've actually strung a string down the hallway. And then also for the first time, I hung a string up in my bedroom. Ugh! And I put them on my bedside dimmer, which I usually use for this lamp. And I cannot go to my wide angle lens, but you can see I can dim them down. And these actually make an excellent, these make excellent bedroom lighting for when I'm going to bed at night. I just dim them way down while I'm reading or whatever I'm doing before I go to sleep. And I very much like the atmosphere. So, I guess to recap, why did I get into all this? It was about 20 years ago when I first saw LED Christmas lights. I was about 10 years old. And I saw them pop up for sale in Canadian Tire, and of course, it was brand new technology and I had never seen anything like it. And especially when you're a kid, it's whiz bang cool stuff. And I actually bought a string of 35 LED lights for like, a string of like 25 LED lights for like 35 bucks. It was premium technology back in the day. And then of course, in the next 10 years or so, I saw LED Christmas lights completely take over. And I saw the old-fashioned C7 and C9 Christmas lights like these slowly disappear. And now they're almost completely extinct. Although I will say, here where I live, there are 1 or 2 houses. I don't know if they're actual incandescent ones or if they're using the new, really good LED ones, which I'll talk about in a bit. But there are a couple of houses that have lights like these hung up, and they're just beautiful. They stand out so well against all the contemporary or conventional, I guess, LED stuff. And the reason is of course, when I saw all these disappear and get replaced with the LED stuff, I grew kind of nostalgic for these old incandescent Christmas lights. And I grew a little bit of disdain for the LED Christmas lights because the color that the conventional LED Christmas lights put out, it's very monochromatic. Because LEDs, colored LEDs, put out a very narrow band or even a single wavelength of colored light. And so the color they put out is very monochromatic, very, very saturated. Some people actually like that, but I'm not a fan. It just looked too garish to me, especially blue LED Christmas lights. They are so laser sharp and so overpowering compared to all the other colors. So even though it was cool, whiz-bang new technology when I was a kid, as it became the norm and as I grew older, I started to miss the old incandescent Christmas lights. And so once I had gotten out of university and I finally had a job and my first, living alone for the first time but not being in university, I thought, hey, I have my own place that I can decorate, and I'm growing kind of nostalgic for the old incandescent Christmas lights. How about I see if I can procure some strings, procure some bulbs, and it turned out to be remarkably easy. Vintage Christmas light strings and bulbs are very affordable to get. And so 5 years ago, I bought several vintage C7 Christmas light strings on eBay and shopgoodwill.com. I think I bought just strings that already had bulbs attached, so I already had mostly working bulbs to go with them, but I searched in thrift stores and I found some spare bulbs, and now I am at what you see here. And I adore it. I'm actually looking to maybe shed a couple of strings. The strings that you see up here, in here and in the hallway, they've got, let me actually turn on an overhead light. You can see there's this red, and it's a very dark green, although sometimes red and black is used, this twisted wire. And I really like how this looks. So all the sets you see here are this twisted wire. And these strings, they were made, it's impossible to tell. After World War II, Christmas light strings became a commodity. They became very cheap. Tons of companies were selling them. And the best companies like Noma and General Electric, they'd put their logo on like the sockets or at least the plugs, or at least on a little paper tag. But there were so many other companies that were making strings for stores like Kmart, JCPenney, and they were more or less just cheap generic stuff that doesn't have a brand name on it unless the string is in the original packaging. So I don't know how old these strings are because they're all unbranded. However, this style of string with the twisted red and green wiring and the black could be plastic but could actually be Bakelite sockets. These were made between the 1940s and the 1960s. The 1940s was when they transitioned from cloth-covered wiring to this plastic insulated wiring. And then in the 1960s was when they transitioned from this style of string to the green straight wire, just two wires parallel together, that's conventional today. So these strings are between 60 and 80 years old, which is kind of really cool. when you think about it, how old these are, and they're surviving, and I'm using them right now. And some of you, your stomach might churn when you hear that these Christmas light strings are between 60 and 80 years old. And let me tell you, I don't take it lightly either. There is definitely some safety precautions that have to be taken. When I procured these strings, you better believe I gave them a once over, checked all the wiring, made sure there was no breaks in the insulation. I checked the plugs, make sure they all seemed safe. And I've actually done, repair work on these strings. For example, see if I can find one here. Not on this string. This string's got all its original sockets. And it's got its original plugs. But this string, here we go, this socket is new. This is a new socket. This is not one of the original sockets. Here's one of the original sockets. Got kind of this rectangular shape. Here's a new socket. Here's another new socket. That one's new too. In fact, I think most of the sockets on this string, which go from here to here, are new. I replaced most of the original sockets because they were not making contact with the wire anymore. And this is possible because this style of string, the sockets are just stabbed into the wiring. Here's a new socket as well. So you can buy the new sockets. I bought a bag of new sockets. I bought them, I think, from christmaslightsource.com. I think that's the name of the website. They sell new sockets just for repairing this style of string, or the style that has two paralleled wires like the modern strings are. So all the flaky or not working sockets, I pried the back off them to take the socket out. And the new sockets are two pieces that you basically just squeeze together. I used not locking pliers, but a vise with the spinny thing. I have a little vise that I took in, and I just squeezed the socket on the new socket onto the wires. And so I was able to, revive this very old string of lights and make it safe by replacing the sockets. And I believe, no, that one's got its original plug. One of these, let me see. Right over there. So this string, this string here, that is a new plug. So something I didn't like about the original plug, might have had frayed wiring or something, just stuck a new Leviton plug on there, and this string is safe. So I give these things, I really do take safety seriously, especially as I get older. It must be that maturity thing that my parents were always talking to me about. But yeah, I do use caution when setting these up. This year, even though, when I last put them away, they were all fine, this year I did the same. I gave them a once over, made sure everything looked good, and then when I tested the strings, I actually put them on my dim bulb tester so that if there was a short, it would become apparent. I also did that because the strings themselves aren't actually the biggest source of nervousness for me. It's actually the bulbs. Vintage C7 bulbs can actually fail quite violently, and I've experienced it. I'll never forget a string that I bought, I think, on shopgoodwill.com. It came, I tested it. I was in my ex's house, and I plugged it in, and a couple of the bulbs went pop. And when I say went pop, it was violent. It was very loud. It was very bright. The bulbs didn't break. But C7 bulbs, or at least vintage ones, they can sometimes fail a little violently. And it's just a challenge because of how small the bulb is and I'm sure half a century of aging maybe makes some of the internal components inside the bulb brittle, and it fails in such a way that it actually shorts out inside the bulb. Modern C7 bulbs, all modern light bulbs, have a little fusible link inside them actually. So if a bulb does fail in that fashion, the fuse burns out. The fuse is down in the base of the bulb. But the oldest of these bulbs you see here probably don't have that safety mechanism. So another reason I put these on my dim bulb tester was just so that if any bulbs were gonna fail catastrophically, they could do it in a safe manner. But here we go. I actually had, so there's between this and the hallway and my bedroom, there's how many bulbs? I think there's between 55 and 60 bulbs, I think. And I had 9 bad bulbs out of the box this year. When I last used these 3 years ago, you know, I had tested all the bulbs back then and I put everything away with no dead bulbs. But just 3 years of sitting, I had 9 dead bulbs out of the box, which is actually quite remarkable. So I'm actually down to the point where, so some of these bulbs, not all of these bulbs are super old. Some of these are probably only 20 or 30 years old, but some of these bulbs are probably 50 or 60 years old. All the ones here, I don't think any of these are particularly old. These are probably in the 20 to 30-year-old range. But the string in my bedroom is where the oldest bulbs are. So there's one particular kind of C7 bulb that I really love, and it's the General Electric ceramic coated bulbs. They made them up until the 1980s, I think, and then they switched to painted bulbs. They branded them Glow Bright. They changed the way the bulbs were made as a safety measure. The old ceramic coated bulbs were 7 watts. The ceramic coating attenuated the light a lot, and so they get freaking hot. But the new Glow Bright bulbs, they were only 5 watts, and the painted colored coating let more light through, so there's less light being attenuated, converted into heat. The bulb runs cooler, it's safer, and that's why they did that. But the ceramic coated bulbs, they're my favorite. They look very unique compared to other, you know, the conventional painted bulbs. So they're my favorites. So I have a small collection of the GE ceramic coated bulbs. I've always left them until last. I never wanted to use them until I ran out of all the other bulbs. But I'm now at the point where, particularly once I put this string up, because I put this string up last, I actually finally delved into the GE ceramic coated bulbs. So it's just the green and blue ones here. So those two are said bulbs. These two are said bulbs. And these two are said bulbs. And if we look right here, another telltale sign. Look at that. You've got the General Electric logo stamped on the bulb there. Really, really cool. And yeah, the color of these is just different from other bulbs. I'm not sure how well I can demonstrate this. I'll try and do this. So here's a modern, let's say, blue bulb. It's got a very smooth color. And then here's the GE ceramic coated bulb. You can see it's got kind of a mottled color to it. And also the color is not quite as saturated. And so I really like how it looks. This one I believe is a GE. Yeah, there's the logo there. Let me go back to autofocus. So yeah, these GE ceramic coated bulbs, which GE made from like the 1910s to the 1960s or 70s, or maybe a little bit into the 80s. They're my favorite C7 Christmas light bulbs. So I've got just a few of them, and I'm finally delving into them this year. Actually, I don't think this one's a GE one because there's paint missing from it. What's this say? Yeah, this isn't a GE. So I just became a little bit of a hypocrite because I thought that was a GE, but it's not. But yeah, so I'm finally delving into the GE bulbs. I'm actually completely out of white bulbs now. If we look over here, I've got an orange where a white should be. The classic pattern is red, blue, green, orange, white. And I've got an orange there. I've got a big surplus of red and orange bulbs. I'm not sure why. My best guess is because I think like those window decorations that have like 5 candles on them, my grandparents had them when I was a kid in their windows. I think they classically came with red and or orange bulbs. So I just seem to have procured a surplus of those. And I'm actually completely out of whites. Now luckily, white's the easiest to get because you can just use white nightlight bulbs. That's what that is. That's just a 4-watt nightlight bulb. And because it's white, the fact that it's 4 watts, whereas C7 Christmas lights are generally 5 or 7 watts, you can't really notice the difference in brightness because it's white. It's letting the most amount of light through. What you do notice is that at least the nightlight bulbs I procured, they've got a slightly different shape. The tip is a bit blunt on them compared to a pointier tip. But who's going to notice? I certainly don't care. So I think I'll go down to the surplus and salvage store. Maybe I'll go into the Ace Hardware store over the border in Maine as well. See if I can just find some white nightlight bulbs. And then I'll have some spare nightlight bulbs. But other than that, I'm now at a point where either next year or maybe in a couple or 3 years from now, I've got to look into what I'm going to do because I'm running out of bulbs. So there's 2 ways I'm considering going. One is, since I last spoke about vintage Christmas lights, there are now not 1 but 2 companies making excellent LED Christmas light bulbs. The first is called True Tone. Tiny company, I think it's just 2 guys. I don't know if they have manufacturing staff besides that, but from what I've read, like at least like the main like management side of the company, it's just 2 guys who love vintage looking Christmas lights. They've developed the most beautiful LED Christmas lights I've ever seen. They look so similar to the old incandescent bulbs. They look fantastic, and I may actually buy some just so when the weather gets warm again, I can switch all these bulbs out for the LED ones and keep using these in the summer just because it's so pretty. Why wouldn't you want to run Christmas lights like this all year round? But obviously the heat is a problem. Between this and the hallway is 300 watts. Great in the winter. I generally don't have to run heat in here in the winter at all. And having 300 watts of beautiful vintage Christmas lights certainly helps. But when the weather gets warm, it will be a problem. So I may actually buy some of the True Tone LED bulbs. Because I'm curious and I want to try them out. Also, I want to support a tiny company who's trying to make beautiful old school looking Christmas lights. But also it would allow me to just keep using these in the warm weather. The second company is one called Seasons Reflections. I believe that's the name of the company. The brand name of the product that they're making is called Vintaglow. Now, they're not C7 or C9 bulbs. That's what True Tone's making, C7 and C9. Vintaglow are the mini lights. And it never occurred to me, well, I was going to say it never occurred to me that incandescent mini lights are going away. My mother still has tons of them that we put on the Christmas tree every year. And I don't think they are. I think you can still, well, I think you can still buy incandescent C7 and C9 lights maybe. Maybe, I might be wrong on that. But I'm pretty sure that incandescent mini lights are still quite common to find in stores. But they also make LED versions, and they suffer from all the same problems. The really sharp monochromatic light, overwhelming blues, just don't look anything like what they replaced. And so Seasons Reflections with their Vinteglow bulbs, they look just like the old school incandescent mini lights. They look really, really nice. And if you watch the YouTube channel Technology Connections, he's made videos about both True Tone and Vinteglow. He's shown them on video. He's given his review. He's like the authoritative figure in LED Christmas lights. And he's given both of them 2 thumbs up. He really likes them. And from what I've seen in videos and pictures, they are indeed a really, really nice product. And I personally hope that more people, not just weirdos like me, but more normal people discover these products and use them over the conventional LED lights. I think it would be really cool to see a nice, warm, colorful glow return to the streets. Really, really nice. So I'm considering buying the True Tone C7 bulbs so I can keep using these, but also because I'm running out of spare bulbs. But also, I wouldn't mind procuring more of the GE ceramic coated bulbs. They show up on eBay. I probably shouldn't be talking about this because maybe other people are going to start buying them and they're going to buy them before I can buy them and I'll never get my hands on them. Whatever. But you can buy new old stock GE ceramic coated C7 bulbs on eBay. The prices, you'll pay like 15 bucks for 4 bulbs. Not really a great use of my money, especially for a little basically pet project that this is. You know, I'm kind of on the fence about it, but I may choose to do that. Once I start running out of bulbs even more than I am now, maybe I will procure some more vintage GE ceramic coated bulbs. It would be pretty darn cool to see this apartment lit up with those beautiful GE ceramic coated bulbs. So I may do that, and I may buy some True Tone bulbs too. If I do either of those things, you'll hear about it either next year or whenever I do my next vintage Christmas lights update. Or maybe when the warm weather comes, if I do buy the True Tones and try them in here, I will make a video about those and my thoughts on them as well. I mentioned how the 1940s to 60s style of string with the red and green or sometimes red and black twisted wiring, I like them more than the string I've got in here, which is the single green cord that became the standard beginning in the 1960s. But this string is probably actually the most valuable C7 string I own because it's this string. This General Electric Christmas Multiple 15 light set. This is, I think, from the 1960s, possibly the 70s. But gosh, look at this box. What a beautiful design. This is just really, really lovely. And you got the artwork there, touting its improvements over the old-fashioned style of string that I like better. Really, really lovely boxed set. And here's what I like most, the bulbs. Those beautiful GE ceramic coated bulbs, each of them stamped with the GE logo on them. The red ones are upside down for some reason. Very, very nice. So those are the GE ceramic coated bulbs I have left, plus I think 2 or 3 green and blue ones that I have in my stash separately. But yeah, really, really nice. And then over here is the Noma Heritage glass globe bulbs that Canadian Tire sold for just 1 year in, I think, 2020 was the year. And I can't believe they only sold these. They had the Heritage series were a whole series of stuff. So you had the glass globe. These are G30 incandescent bulbs. And then they had like 3 or 4 other types of vintage style lights. Some of them were incandescent and some of them were LED made to look like incandescent, although with obviously not the improvements in color at all, but just mostly like the cosmetic style was what they went after. But it was only for 1 year that they sold these. And so I bought this box in, I think it was 2020. And then the next day I went back and bought a second box because I figured, you know what? Someday, I figured if I didn't buy a second box, I'd regret it because my luck, it would only be a 1 year thing. Turned out it only was a 1 year thing. And I don't know why. Maybe they just didn't sell at all. So I've got 2 boxes of these, and I made a video of these G30 incandescent bulbs with the painted color. These are just gorgeous. They're 5 watts, and because it's a bigger bulb, they're a bit softer, a bit dimmer, and they just look so beautiful. And the killer app for these is because of the bigger bulb, but they're still only 5 watts, the bulbs are relatively cool to the touch compared to C7s. So you can safely put these on a tree with no problem at all. But yeah, I bought 2 boxes of these. Year before last, I put these up in the living room and kitchen. But I've thought, you know, I don't need 2 boxes for these. And so I've considered selling the second box of these. I figure possibly I can maybe get some money for a box of these listed on eBay. It's very selfish, I know, but I don't have a need for 2 boxes. But the reason I thought that was because shortly after I bought these, I discovered that these G30 incandescent bulbs are just available online. They make them in probably China, and you can buy them for quite affordably on Amazon or eBay. However, this year I looked it up again because I've been using these and the bulbs have not lasted very long. This box is actually the box that I use, and you can see 1 bulb missing there. I've actually had 3 or 4 bulbs burn out. And when that happens, I rob bulbs from this package. So this year I thought, well, maybe I'll buy, you know, honestly, I think I like the G30 bulbs even more than the C7 bulbs. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just buy a pack of spare G30 bulbs. I'll repopulate this box, and then I'll sell this box. But I can't find them anymore. They're selling LED versions, and they're selling incandescent, translucent colored bulbs, but not the painted bulbs. I can't find these anywhere. Now, maybe I'm just doing a bad job looking, but if I'm not, you suddenly can't buy these bulbs anymore, even though you could back when I bought these boxes. So I guess I am keeping both boxes now because even if I only use 1 string at a time, I want the stock of spare bulbs. That's too bad. I hope I'm wrong, but maybe that's the case. If that is the case, then hey, maybe True Tone will get into making G30 bulbs. That would be pretty cool. So yeah, that's the story with these. What else did I want to show you? These are the sockets that I talked about. These are the new sockets that I buy. When you buy a new set of C7 or C9 Christmas lights today, these are the sockets that come on them. I think there's just the one company making this style of socket that you can see here. They got little stabby teeth, so they stab into the wiring. And these sockets are made by a company called Admiral. And I think Admiral makes strings as well. So when you buy like a Walmart brand light string, it was made by Admiral. So yeah, you get the upper part, which has the stabby teeth on it. And then the lower part. And you basically thread the wire through there. And put the socket on top, and then take a vise or something and squeeze the two pieces together so that it stabs into the wiring. So I bought a bunch of these new sockets. They've been very handy in refurbishing my vintage strings that had bad sockets. Now, speaking of strings that have bad sockets, it hasn't been all good, because I do have a couple of strings here with sockets that have gone bad. So this set here, this is just a cheap-ass set. The sockets have a brand name Gilbert on them, so I'm going to guess that's who made the sockets. And these are weird sockets. The bulbs don't even screw in. They just shove in, and friction keeps them in place. And most of the sockets on this string, luckily it's only a short string, but the bulbs, you either have to really get the bulbs in there to make contact, or some of the sockets I can't get the bulbs to make contact at all anymore. And when I look in there, the little metal tab that's supposed to touch the bottom of the bulb, the metal tab has been bent down. So I think the bulb just literally isn't making contact with the socket anymore. So this string needs new sockets. And then this string, an older string that I like here, this has a socket. Let's see, which one is it? It's this one. Let me turn my light on. You can see this socket, the little metal button that's supposed to make contact with the bottom of the bulb, it's gotten shoved past this phenolic or whatever little washer that it was riveted into. And it's obviously very broken now. So this socket needs to be replaced. But here's the problem with this string. You can see this string is not the conventional type where the sockets are just stabbed into the wiring. This string and one of the strings out in the kitchen are similar. The sockets are actually soldered and they've doubled up on the wiring. So this part of the string is a completely separate piece of wiring from this part of the string. This comes in, gets soldered to the socket, and then this comes in and gets soldered to the socket. So I can't simply replace with these new stabby sockets, because the stabby sockets can only stab into 2 wires at a time. And so what I had to do, because I had to replace a socket on this string before, you can see here's a new socket. Here's where the original socket lived, and I just had to cut the wires and then resolder them back together and heat shrink them. And that's not ideal for 2 reasons. First of all, it doesn't look that great, as you can see. But second of all, I really don't like the idea, you know, these primitive half a century plus old light sockets, there's already enough safety concerns with using them. And I really don't like the fact that I have to do homebrew soldering and heat shrinking to put new sockets on them. So I really don't like that. So I've already had to replace one socket on this. Now I've got to replace another. And the only way I'm going to be able to do that is to do the same thing. Cut the wires and then heat shrink it. And when you get to a point where you have a string this old and I've had to cut it and resolder it twice, is it worth it? Should I just throw this away? I'm not sure. That's what I'm deliberating with right now. I also see I put a new Leviton socket on this back in the day. I think I had this string in my old office at my old job. I had this string of lights strung out, and I had the bubble lights screwed into this. So yeah, I'm not sure if I should just call it quits. You know, in my old age, safety is becoming more and more of a concern for me, just because I do work with so much vintage electrical stuff. At what point should I just call it quits and toss this whole string? Save the plug, of course. This plug cost me probably like 10 friggin' bucks. So yeah, I'm kind of considering that. And I had to do the same with the string I've got hung out in the kitchen. It had a bad socket, probably same thing. and I did the same thing. I cut it and had to resolder it. But yeah, I don't know if I should do it a second time for this or if I should just toss it. So there, we got 2 strings. This one I might, of course, the Admiral sockets I bought, you can get these in black or green. I bought black ones because that's what I needed for most of my socket repairs. This is a green string. So this one will be easy to put new sockets on. They'll be black, but that's okay. So I'll probably refurbish this one too. But the other thing is that I'm looking to shed some strings. And this is where you guys come in, because if you're interested, you have an opportunity to procure some strings to me. I'm not the hugest fan of these green single cord strings. I really do like the older twisted wiring type. So I'm looking to actually shed this string. And then I've got this other string here, which is the same single cord, and I think this string's fine. I'll have to test it, but last I remember there's no bad sockets or anything on this string. This string also has, I mean, it shows the bulb being twisted in, but when I look at a socket, I guess you can twist a bulb. Yeah, I guess you do twist the bulbs in the sockets on this one. I think this string's totally fine, but I'm just not a fan of the green single cord style. This is a generic-ish, judging by that font, probably from the 70s, Universal Lights. And on the back it says Universal Electric Products Incorporated, Montreal, Canada, made in Canada with imported lights. That's pretty cool. Canadian-made string of lights. So I think I'd like to shed this. If I ever want to get more strings of lights, I'll just hunt down more of the twisted wire kind. So I'll probably populate this with, I've got about 40 translucent C7 bulbs. I like the solid, the painted solid color style. I have a bunch of translucent ones. I don't really care for those, so I'm looking to shed those as well. So I may populate this with those translucent bulbs and just list this on Facebook Marketplace, see if I can get 10 bucks for it. But if anyone wants this, shoot me an email, themaritimegirl@hotmail.com. I'll populate this with translucent bulbs. You can have it for 10 bucks plus shipping. And actually, if you do want to buy this string from me, I'll also throw in this string as is, and I'll throw in this string, but I think I'll take back my $10 Leviton plug. So there you go. If anyone wants this, 10 bucks plus shipping. You'll get this set, which I believe is completely fine, but I'll test it. I'll populate it with translucent bulbs. You'll get this green set, which needs new sockets, and you'll get this set, which will be missing this plug and also need a new socket, and I will mark this set as being unsafe for use until repair. There you go. Shoot me an email if you want all this for 10 bucks plus shipping. I think that's what I should do. I don't think I want to repair either of these sets. And if I don't get a bite, I think I'll just throw these 2 sets away. I don't think they're worth my time trying to repair them. So there you go. And I think that concludes my showcase of my 2024-2025 installation of vintage C7 Christmas lights. I'm really happy that I got in the spirit this year to go ahead and do this. I think it really pretties the place up. I'm not one for decorating, but I'm really glad I did this. It boosts my mood. It's really pretty. I really do love just looking at these, especially at night in my bedroom on that dimmer. These are actually on a dimmer too. It's on the far wall over there. So if I just go over, you can see I can dim these down too if I want to. Very, very nice. But yeah, I'm really, really happy. Glad I got in the spirit, and also really happy to see that, you know, in the years since I first procured all these strings of lights and all these bulbs, we now have not one but 2 companies making LED bulbs that look just like the incandescent bulbs. That is so cool to see, and I wish the two companies doing this all the best. I really hope they're successful in their endeavors. I guess they must be successful so far because True Tone's been around for 5 years now. So really nice to see. I hope more people pick up on them. But yeah, that's it. I've got a few strings that I'd like to shed. These 3 strings here, plus the 4th one in the bedroom, which is the GE string. I'm sticking with these. These aren't going away anytime soon, unless this string, which is the soldered type and not the stab type, unless this develops more bad sockets, then I might have to consider doing away with this string as well, unfortunately. But yeah, now at the point where I need to consider buying more spare bulbs, and I am going to consider buying a set of True Tone bulbs, especially for when the weather gets warm. I think it'd be really cool if I could keep using these in the summer. Although it's not going to be cheap to buy enough True Tone bulbs for all 4 sets in here. It'd be something like $100, so not a trivial purchase at all. But it's something I'll consider doing. But then for the winter, if I want to go back to the incandescents, and I think I would like to stick with the incandescents, I am thinking of maybe procuring some more GE ceramic coated bulbs. But that may or may not be easier said than done. But that's a problem for probably a year or 2 down the road, at least. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed. You know, I said this would be a relatively short and simple video. I think I've got something like 40 or 50 minutes recorded here. How do I find so much to talk about with something so mundane? I don't know, but that's just what I specialize in, I guess. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Maybe got a little bit of inspiration from it. Maybe you want to try those True Tone bulbs. I can't say I recommend anybody procure 70-year-old strings of lights just because of the whole safety aspect of it. But you can buy new strings. Of course, True Tone also sells strings as well, so you can buy new C7 strings or C9 strings. But yeah, I implore anybody to consider going for the vintage Christmas light look. I really do like it a lot. So there you go. Thanks so much for watching. Eventually I'll get back to videos of normal stuff. And I will see you then.